Hello and welcome to today's HDI webinar. We are excited that you're joining us for Unlocking Your Workforce Potential, IT Support from Anywhere to Anywhere. Thank you to Rescue by LogMeIn for sponsoring today's presentation. I'm Andrew Gillum, Associate Analyst at HDI, and I have a couple housekeeping announcements before we begin. If you experience any technical problems, please refresh your browser. I encourage you to ask questions at any time during today's discussion. Click on the Q&A tab in your BrightTalk window, and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of today's presentation. Today's discussion will be available on demand shortly after the completion of this live event. You'll receive an email reminder once it becomes available. You may also download the slides from today's presentation under the Attachments tab. Connect with HDI on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn for news about upcoming events and resources. Join the conversation with other IT service and support professionals at connect.thinkhdi.com. Be sure to check out our Spockcast, the single point of contact podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. I am thrilled to introduce today's speakers. Rayanne Bruno is the president of Business Solutions Training, an organization focused on training and consulting in various areas of improving the customer experience, ITIL and knowledge-centered service, service desk improvement, internal marketing, metrics, and ITIL process improvement. Rayanne was inducted into the HDI Hall of Fame in 2017 and was named one of Cherwell's IT Legends that same year. She holds several ITIL and HDI certifications and is a business associate for HDI, ITIL, and Support Center certification courses and consulting. She is a member of the HDI International Standards Committee and is a frequent speaker at leadership and support conferences and the author of the HDI focus books, Translating IT Metrics into Business Benefits and What Have You Done for Me Lately? Creating an Internal Marketing Culture. We're also joined by Marie Russo, the Director of Product Marketing for Customer Engagement and Support Solutions at LogMeIn. She plays a key role in helping the organization address buyer needs in the work-from-anywhere era through an expanding support solutions portfolio. Marie has 20 years of experience understanding contact center and IT needs across a variety of industries, including high-tech, telecommunications, and financial services. Thank you to both of our speakers for joining us today. And now I'll turn it over to you, Rayanne, to kick off the presentation.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for being here today. As you know, we are talking about providing IT support from anywhere to anywhere. And some of our topics today will be talking about this whole new normal. And a lot of you know better than I just what that looks like for your own organizations. And I would guess that we're still in this interim area of the new normal. We went remote very quickly because of the pandemic. It definitely changed the way we work. It changed the way we support and the way we need to respond to what our employees need. And one of those key needs is this interoperability between tools. For support specifically, you need to have this ability to work at the speed of conversation. So you need to have this integration of tools where you can reach the information that you need to have, use the resources that you need to have, and get your employees back to productivity. And one thing I think that we have been realizing for a while, but it's really come so much faster, and it's been expedited as far as expectations are concerned. But employees expect to be able to do at work what they're able to do outside of work. So their expectations are shaped by how they operate outside of work. With going virtual so quickly and with providing so many new tools and needing to collaborate and have video conferencing and all of this, employees now really have that need, right? And it's been interesting because for some companies, they were pretty well equipped to go virtual. People had devices that were issued by the organization and they had laptops and they were able to easily go remotely. Others were not. They needed to buy devices or they had to very quickly say, okay, it's bring your own device, which absolutely impacted support. And I'll talk to that a little in a couple of slides. So the bottom line is that the support model needs to change to be able to support and adapt to this new normal. And again, I do believe we're in an interim. Some of your companies are rotating. Some people are at offices. Some people are still working virtually. Some companies are still totally remote. So that's going to change over time as we move through the pandemic, and that new normal will be redefined, which will also change again that support model. So we'll talk about ways that companies have adapted, how it has impacted support, and what we can do to really favorably impact this customer experience. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew for a poll.
Thank you, Rayanne. The poll is, what is your top challenge? And the choices are increased volume, delayed follow-through from other teams in their response or resolution, remotely resolving traditional desktop support in-person issues, lack of customer knowledge about the technologies, or lack of integration of resources which negatively impacts efficiency, such as your knowledge-based collaboration or ITSM tools. You can vote by clicking on the Vote tab below the slide in your BrightTalk window. Just click on Vote and select what your top challenge is. We'll leave this open for another minute or two.
And also, if we missed your top challenge, please feel free to put it into the question and answer area, and Andrew will add that to the results.
Great idea, Rayanne. We've got a couple votes coming in. Just click on that Vote tab below the slide in your BrightTalk window. All right, polling is closed. Just a moment while we tabulate the final results here. All right, the final results are in. So we have a couple of ties. Tied for first place is delayed follow-through from other teams in their response or resolution. That is tied with remotely resolving traditional desktop support or in-person issues with 29% each. And then our second runner-up is lack of integration of resources, which negatively impacts efficiency, such as knowledge-based collaboration or ITSM tools. 17% of our audience shared that. And then last place with 11% each as a tie, increased volume, and lack of customer knowledge about technologies. Back to you, Rayanne.
Thank you, Andrew. And hey, these are interesting results. I did not expect, I have to tell you, that the collaboration between the other teams was going to be up there high, because I've heard a lot of things where people feel like that has actually gotten better through all the collaboration. So I'd love to explore that a little further as we go through, and I will speak to that. And then I'm not surprised, honestly, about the traditional, when we traditionally have to touch something, needing now to get creative on how we can do that, whether it's deploying hardware, whatever it might be. And I will share some ways that some companies have overcome some of these or handled them as we get through here. But overall, I feel like the others are pretty even at 17 and 11%. So interesting. We will talk about this. And there was a blog by Kevin McMahon, and he talked about these 5 new challenges facing support centers. And one is managing the customer experience across multiple channels. Now, you said that one of your challenges is just not having this integration of your tools, and that absolutely impacts your productivity and your ability to favorably impact your employees' productivity. And I just want to share a story here for a moment. Anybody who's a leader and who is really looking to help your team become more efficient from a support perspective, sometimes we feel like it's okay that these tools aren't really tightly integrated. And maybe I need to go out to my knowledge base and I copy and I paste something into my ticket, and we think, okay, that's pretty quick, it's all right. It might be a little cumbersome, but they can handle it. Well, one of the goals that we always talk about with HDI is to be able to work at the speed of conversation. And I will tell you that maybe I even thought, okay, if it's really quick, it's not that big of an impact. But I was at a conference once and somebody shared a story that they were implementing Kaizens. And if you're unfamiliar with that, it is assessing workflow and seeing where you can eliminate waste. So, for example, if I'm working in a warehouse and I walk 6 steps to get a tool, 6 steps back to get back to work, 6 steps to return the tool, 6 steps to get back to work, how do I eliminate those 24 steps? So as they were implementing this, they told the entire organization that we are happy to do a Kaizen for you in whatever part of the organization you are. And the service desk asked for it. So they sent the guy out, he did his time check, and he came back to the team and he said, you know what, I'm sorry. I know we said we would do this for anybody, but we're talking about 12 seconds, people. They're upset because they have to go out of their tool, they go into this other one, they copy, they paste, and it's wasting 12 seconds. I just don't think this is worth us doing this. And the team said, no, we said we would do it for anybody, so we're doing it. Well, take 12 seconds times every support analyst on your team, times every support contact that they have through the day. And in that particular organization, that 12 seconds equated to a day and a half of wasted time. So this interoperability, this integration of tools, equipping our team to work efficiently and very productively, it becomes really important. And that's number 3 here, this operational efficiency. And when it comes to support, there are ways, I'm sure you've heard of the concept shift left. And the idea of that is, where are we currently resolving this? How are we getting people back to productivity? And it's an internal cost as we transfer it between teams, as we escalate it to a higher level team and maybe a higher salaried person, then the costs are higher internally. And the costs are high from an organizational perspective. What is it that an employee can't do for our external customers when they're not operable in their jobs? So this operational efficiency, we want to be efficiently supporting our employees in our organization, and we also want to allow them to be efficient in their own jobs. So as we have all these changes, we're talking about keeping pace with changing customer behavior, and we've seen a lot of that through COVID. People are utilizing their collaboration tools more. They're using more bandwidth. They're coming in through VPN when maybe they didn't before. Just so many different behaviors that we're supporting, and it's driving the complexion of what we're doing. So we might be actually doing a lot of how-tos. We might be going through steps over and over. We might be tweaking policies and needing to communicate that. And we might even be providing other channels to be able to handle that. So we need to understand the impact on these changing behaviors and even the pace of technology changing. And we also have to keep our teams skilled so that they can do this. We've seen a lot more movement to cloud-based solutions, all types of different tools, which also changes the dynamics of how we support our organization. Now, one thing I do want to point out, I think that a lot of organizations very quickly were able to stand up chat rooms so that teams could collaborate and they could get the answer very quickly, maybe even real time. However, one thing that I'm not always hearing is how we're capturing that. Because maybe it solves it for the moment, but what happens if somebody else has that same thing? If we want to really be working at this level of efficiency, we've got to build it into our practices that we're not only sharing it live, but now we're formalizing how we're capturing it for reuse later. So this is showing you some of these needs for our support professionals. One is that real-time collaboration. Now, I've heard from a lot of people in a lot of organizations that this has greatly improved in their own organization. They said that because everybody was working remotely, a lot of these support teams, like let's just take desktop, for example, they're not out at these locations any longer, so they are here and they can see their collaboration tools and they're able to respond a lot more quickly and live. While somebody's working with their customers, are getting these answers. And there are a lot of benefits to that. One is that first tier is learning so that later it doesn't need to be escalated any longer. So we're achieving that shift left. 2, we're getting our employees back to productivity a lot more quickly. But again, we then need to be able to capture that, either get it into self-help if needed, get it into knowledge so that we can use it across our teams, but we're able to tap into and learn from each other a lot more easily, and we're benefiting our customers by getting them back to work. So that goes back to, we talked about the integrated tools and how important that is. Certainly our support professionals need to have answers. So are we equipping them with a quick and easy way to do that? And are we equipping them not just for the moment, but for every issue after this so that we can reuse it? And then we need to train them. Now, I think the bring your own device is very interesting. Some organizations had to go to that. And they're not standard equipment. And it might not even be something that you personally use if you're a support professional. I use an iPhone. If somebody calls me about an Android, I'm going to be challenged on that one, right? So I want to have those answers. I want to have the knowledge, but I also want to be trained on things changing. Now, I talked about this interim new normal. Let's say that the new normal remains that we have bring your own device. Well, think about the world we live in. Everybody wants to get that new phone when it comes out. So we are consistently going to have this cycle of needing to learn and keep up with these changing technologies. So training becomes very important as well. I'm hearing from a lot of organizations that on-demand training has become just invaluable. And I also read an article about Gen Z, who is our youngest in the workforce right now, and they grew up with technology, and that shapes their expectations at work. So they expect to be able to have the latest and the greatest, and they'll even change companies to have that. So certainly when they're doing their jobs, they want to be able to do it productively. If they do run into any issues, they want to get back to productivity very quickly. And that generation also very much likes this on-demand training. So that can change the support model too. Maybe it's not just about knowledge articles. Maybe now we want to have YouTube videos, not necessarily YouTube, but videos that are part of our knowledge sources and part of our self-help. Now, a huge challenge, because we've really reverted to a lot of channels. There are a lot of people who have gone to chat. They've tried to implement chat bots in some cases. Some people are even doing text support. There are just a lot of different channels now, and a big challenge is having the sufficient resources to be able to do it, having the tools, and then also having the right number of people. But this is where, and I'll be talking about this as we go through, that if we're really evaluating what is happening today, keeping up with the trends, then we're better able to put channels in place and automate or optimize or put self-help out there so that it's not necessarily increasing the volume across the channels. It's changing the complexion of what's coming in, and we want our support teams to be available for business-critical issues. Now, I want to go back for one moment on this across the channels, and I want to talk about the other side of that. Notice it says managing the customer experience across multiple channels. I want to go ahead and share a story of me being a customer, and we had gotten some photos, and when they arrived, they were supposed to be retouched, and they weren't. So I called their support team, talked to somebody. That person was great, really knowledgeable, very friendly, very helpful. To look at that transaction, I would say it was a great transaction. And that person said, okay, I've got to work with this other group. I'm going to let them know this. We will send you the updated retouches within this amount of time. Well, a couple of weeks went by, still hadn't received them, and I hadn't gotten any information. It happened to be Friday after hours, so their phone support wasn't available. So I went ahead and I used their email support, and I got that standard message that said, we will respond to you within 24 hours, business hours, of you submitting this. Well, then Monday comes, and it's around lunchtime, and I still haven't heard anything, so I decide to use chat. So look, I put that one issue in 3 different channels. Now, here was the interesting part. When I submitted it via chat, I referred to the phone call and that they could look at the ticket, and I got the response that, oh, we don't work with that system. Would you please give me your email address and please explain the issue? So I more or less started over. It increased my effort as a customer, and they were disconnected across the channels. So they couldn't pick up where the other left off, which is also a negative impact on our teams. Because if I'm getting frustrated as a customer, I'm going to take that out on the first support person that I actually talk to, right? Or I'm sure I could do it virtually as well. But I want to be able to get back to work. I'm going to get frustrated if it's not working well. And when it's disconnected, it puts a lot of pressure on that person who doesn't have the answers. It just makes everything easier for everybody if we can streamline that process and also share that information. So when we look at the customer's perspective, we need to understand what is important to our employees and what are their expectations. We also need to understand the business. We need to have the proper sense of urgency. We need to know what is business critical, and we need to be looking at trends. What are we seeing? What are people using the most? What are the challenges they are having? How much of this is how-to? How can we train them? How can we get them those answers? And I think another thing that we've seen is that people aren't working standard business hours because their lives have changed as well. They're managing kids working from home or at school or whatever it is. So their schedules have changed, so they want to have that support or that access to their answers 24/7. Remember that their satisfaction on that lower left box is based on what is important to them. To them, it is not about technology. Now it is from the perspective of I need to have this technology to do my job, and I want this to be transparent, I want it to be easy. However, they're not calling you for a technology solution, they're calling you to get them back to work. So we need to understand what is important to them from that perspective, and we need to make sure that our support model focuses that. So one of our handouts is an assessment. It's the Digital 2020, the Digital Experience 2020 report by Vance and Bourne, and it shows that when we don't have a good experience, digital experience for our employees, then they are getting frustrated. They're playing catch up. It even negatively impacts their external customers. They're not happy, so it's definitely driving emotion. Notice I'm frustrated, I'm demoralized, and then we all know that it's very difficult to support an emotional person. We have to get through the emotions. But we also have to understand their situation and have the right empathy to realize this is about business, this is about work. They're frustrated because they can't complete their work. So on just the opposite, that when they have this great digital experience, then they're more efficient, they're happier, they're much more motivated, much more engaged, much more productive, and they have a better feeling about IT and about support. And it also even helps with employee engagement and retention overall. So what we need to do from an IT perspective is understand that the expectation is that we do understand business. We understand the workflow. We're supporting it. I think that everybody in IT needs to know how we're making their jobs easier, how are we saving them time, what's really important, and we need to address the way we support them the same way. So from the support model, they're expecting you to be accessible when they need to have you. They want an easy way to get the answers. Because we have all these different generations in the workforce, many have grown up with technology, and they want to be able to find those easy answers themselves when there's steps or it's policy change or something to that effect. But they want you to be available for something that's a little more complex, and they want to be able to easily get back to work. So they want things to be automated as much as possible, absolutely optimized and streamlined, and it's all about getting back to work. And those multiple channels, they want to have options for how they get their support. But if we go back to my story with the photos, I like to have those multiple channels, but I expect that you know that I contacted you in different channels, that you know it's the same issue, that you know I need to have a status, and that should really drive our work practices. How do we make sure that we're all working, that we're looking across those experiences, that we can keep people updated, and that we build it into our processes? And that's more or less what this is talking about. You'll notice on the right-hand side that I've listed the IDLE 4 guiding principles. I just think they're so practical, and it pretty much says, well, we've got to focus on the value. And my highlights didn't come up, so I'll just go ahead and mention those. We need to focus on the value of what we're delivering to our organization, what's important to them. We also need to look and see what the patterns are. What are the challenges people are experiencing in their jobs? How can we get them back to work? How can we simplify it from a support perspective? But how can we take what we're learning in support and share that across IT so that we make a better employee experience overall for how they're equipped to do their jobs? So it's pretty much understand where you are today and start there, and then progress iteratively with feedback. I think one thing that we saw in COVID is it wasn't perfect when it went out when you did everything at first, right? You expedited a lot of projects, you put new projects into place really fast, and maybe it wasn't perfect, but they were a lot more tolerant because they knew we were trying, and also because it was helping them in some way, and we can keep making it better as we learn. And then, of course, optimizing and automating becomes very important. So the bottom line is we want to understand what our employees are experiencing, how we're impacting that, and we need to understand that impact on support and be able to adapt how we're supporting so that our teams can be productive, so that we can deflect contacts to some of those channels. If it's about using your VPN, here's a support article or here's a video, just making it really easy for people to know that it's there and to be able to use it. And I think one of the number one lessons I learned in my career, you see it on the bottom, is ask. Don't assume. Don't sit in an IT meeting and make decisions on behalf of your employees and the people that you support. Let's understand what their challenges are. Let's listen when they make these complaints or make these comments. Let's start to understand what's slowing them down, what's negatively impacting their productivity, and what can we do to change that. So looking at the trends, look at what we're getting, like the top requests. Can we put those into our service catalog? Can we automate anything? And if we do that, are we educating them so that they know how to access those, how to fulfill those requests, and how to access the different options that they have? Also look at some industry trends, because that can help to drive what we do as well. And then certainly understand their expectations and perceptions. And I think this is important as leaders of support teams. We need to know this of our own employees, our support employees. What are some of their challenges? What is their wish list? What will allow them to work more effectively and more efficiently? So I mentioned looking out across the industry and what we're seeing. This is a study done since COVID about what the challenges are for remote workers. And notice the managing at-home distractions. I think that's driving the varied work hours, right? Where they're working different hours as a result of it. And so they're going to want support during different hours. And again, we want to see how we can best supply that support. And then collaborating with colleagues and clients. I'm seeing this on both sides, both as employees and for support. They used to be able to just look at somebody that's sitting near them and ask a question, or yell across the room, or whatever it might be, and that's not the case today. So now they've got these collaboration channels. And if we are putting channels out there for the employees, we may need to create liaisons that are working within those channels, getting back to IT. Here's what people are asking. Is this the right answer? Here's what people need to have, so that we get visibility into how they're working every day and what their needs are. On the support side, I already mentioned that when we're posting in our chat channels, are we taking a way to formalize that, get it into our knowledge base, get it into our training, so that we are getting better as we move forward, so that we are providing better support and providing more productivity for our employees. And this one talks about the ways that they're still feeling part of the team. So as we know, collaboration is a big one, and certainly they want that to work. But what's interesting, it also drives what they want from you. So let's say I'm in a Slack channel. For example, I was in a class where we had a cohort, and so my immediate cohort, we could post questions, see answers. Then there was a bigger cohort of the overall, everybody in the training. And then if you want to have support, there was also a Slack channel for that. So that starts to drive what they're expecting. Oh, well, why can't we just have a Slack channel for you? And I'm not being tool specific, I'm just giving an example. Whatever that tool is, I want to be able to do that for support too. I want to be able to just put it out here and you answer me and I get back to work. So we want to understand what they're using, what's helping them to feel connected, and understand how they're feeling from that perspective. So to learn this, we want to go beyond the survey, maybe have some conversations. When they're sharing this with us verbally, whether it's in a meeting, a project rollout, a support interaction, let's hear what they're saying, and let's start to quantify what they're expecting, what we can do to make their job easier, how we're helping them to be more efficient. And again, I encourage you to ask your same employees these questions, the people that are working in support. And I love that last question. If we could change one thing that would have a large impact on your productivity and ability to work, what would it be? Sometimes we're afraid to ask those kinds of questions because we're not sure that we can provide what they want. But it's important to know, and more importantly, it's important to know why. What's the value of that? What do they truly need to have? So when we're understanding these expectations and perceptions, then we are starting to learn what's working well, what they're happy about, and sometimes it's very simple to make a change. So for example, if someone said that they have this great onboarding service catalog entry, or you can onboard somebody through their service catalog, that it's highly automated, it's very easy, and yet they were getting so many calls of the service desk with issues with onboarding. And on a one-by-one basis, the people at the service desk were sharing, hey, let's go to this service catalog, let me walk you through this. And they're like, wow, I didn't even know that was there. So as we're learning, it's important to take the next step. Identify whatever that expectation, complaint, perception, whatever it was, and even when it's working good, I think we need to know that. And then you see calm and change. Maybe it's as simple as communication. Maybe it's something we need to change. Maybe we need to change a process. Maybe we need to change the way we're supporting. So in that example that I just gave you, they needed to get the word out that if you're onboarding somebody, here's the link to the service catalog on how you can do that. So let's just take a couple of quick examples here. If the service desk is asking me, anybody I talk to in support is asking me the same questions over and over again. Well, let's take a look at how we're documenting in our tickets. Also, we might do something like swarming, which I will talk about shortly, where we're getting the answer real time so that they're not getting passed on to different support teams. Now, on the getting help, it's easier in the office when I can just ask. Maybe we just need to communicate other ways that they can get those answers very quickly. So I want to just share some real-world examples of ways that people have improved support for their employees. Prior to going remote with COVID, a lot of organizations did a lot of things to do that. And I would love for you to put in your question and answer some of what you've done, and Andrew can share that shortly or at the end when we do Q&A. So what are they did some proactive steps, put some frequently asked questions out, sent them instructions for using VPN and their different tools that were going to be new, how to set up their new office. They created videos. They gave them a lot before they left the office to go work from home so that they had this level of confidence when they were there and ready to work. They also started to really look at these trends of requests. Some of them they just did proactively. Okay, people are going to need to have new devices. They're going to need to have new equipment. So they actually automated a lot in their service catalog. First of all, let's have our top requests in there. Let's make it easy. And they added things like video and the community collaboration options. But again, if we have community portals, we need to monitor those. If we don't have access to those, then we need to have liaisons so that we're still learning from what they're saying to each other. So some of the ways they optimized support were through these chat channels, support channels. I've seen a lot of organizations have a lot of success with better collaboration between support teams. But again, let's formalize this. Now here, let me talk about swarming. Many of you may be swarming and you don't even know it. Swarming is a KCS, knowledge-centered service concept, and it's about resolving real time, pulling in the expert real time to get somebody back to work. And typically that's through collaboration tools. So I might say, Andrew, I'm working with so-and-so, and this is a question, I'm not sure how to do this. Andrew gets into this chat channel and tells me, or maybe comes into my interaction with the customer, and I'm learning from Andrew while he's doing that, and then we're documenting it, and everybody's going to learn and grow as a result of that. Another is just different tools, also integrating those tools, more availability between teams, better communication, and I think this is a big one, really starting to streamline how we're documenting information and sharing that information and communicating out. I always say a status call is a no value add call to the service desk. So if I proactively give you a status or I allow you to go out onto a portal and see it, then you're not going to call me on that. So that's part of that contact deflection. Let's take the easy stuff and let's put it out there for people to do themselves. So we're available for more business critical types of issues. So the goal is to learn and to continually adapt and improve and be able to trend and know what is important. So what are these, and know that this isn't going to change. Technology is going to keep changing, our world's going to keep changing, and we're going to need to adapt with it. But we want to do it in a way that the service desk isn't just absorbing, because there's a breaking point to that. But instead, how can we operate more efficiently? How can we help people to help themselves in some ways and then be there for the more critical ones? And how can we give people what they need to have to do their jobs? Ultimately, how can we better support our organizations, help them to be more productive, and help them to help our organizations to do what they are in business to do? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marie.
Well, thanks, Rayanne. Great presentation there. Lots of good insights. I wanted to follow up on that. I think one of the points that Rayanne made early on that came through in the polling is that one of the challenges organizations are facing is traditional desktop support. So it looks like 29% of people surveyed today said that traditional desktop support continues to be a challenge when you're no longer able to do that in person. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. And that is around the lens of, obviously, the pandemic. So as we know, when COVID hit back in March, a lot of us were caught in our heels trying to migrate an entire workforce to be remote. And if you fast forward to today, what we're seeing, it's not really that remote work experiment, but it's really the next big phase in a workplace revolution. And make no mistake, your employees and customers' expectations have changed forever. And most employees are now saying they want this flexibility to continue after the pandemic is behind us, because it's really allowed for them to have more time, whether that's more time to sleep, to exercise, or spend time with their family and balance their work-life environments more professionally. Now, what does that mean for your bottom line? Well, good news, 77% of remote workers report higher productivity levels when working from home. So now organizations need to dig in and think about beyond crisis management and prepare for long-term growth-oriented remote work. So what does it mean for remote work? Like I said, this is no longer an experiment. It's time to settle in and assess our IT policies and procedures for this era. A flexible work culture isn't just about business. It's also about the people that power your business. And I think this is an important message to put out there. And I think a lot of businesses have been successful by leading with empathy. And that means supporting the employees who breathe life into your business. I know my company, LogMeIn, has been incredibly supportive and empathetic to my needs as a single parent, to other professionals in our organization who are managing with kids that are working from home now for homeschooling. And I think that empathy goes a long way. So it's not just technology, it's really how you care for those around you. And IT really plays a big role. That role is in minimizing business disruptions and ensuring that remote employees can maintain their productivity levels. Two of the biggest challenges facing IT help desks are really, as part of this though, are maintaining security and connectivity. So what's the impact on the help desk? Help desks are adopting all new ways of working to provide the level of support needed for a remote workforce. And research that we recently did showed that 35% are expanding their support for non-sanctioned equipment like personal devices. And we'll talk more about BYOD support in a few moments. And 49% of those help desks were flattening their support tiers. And another 40% also said they were encouraging crowdsourcing support using tools like Slack and Teams. So as Rayanne called out earlier, people are kind of circumventing to some extent their traditional policies and procedures in an effort to provide faster support by going out to their network, coming in through Slack and Teams to crowdsource an answer and get responses fast. Now, we mentioned that 35% of organizations are expanding support for non-sanctioned personal devices. A lot of this has been caused by the disruptions in the PC supply chains, and because those people have brought those new devices into their work, what does BYOD mean for the help desk? Well, it's a couple of things. 49, whoops, it's not advancing. Here we go. Sorry. So those help desk responsibilities are increasing because of this device usage. In fact, 49% of respondents in our survey said that employees' use of personal devices for work has increased to some extent. That's nearly half of people surveyed. And a majority of them said that their companies are becoming more tolerant of BYOD for remote work as they try to meet the demands of their employees needing equipment in their home and possibly didn't have it with them at the time they were asked to go work from home remotely. Now, with this increase in remote work and reliance on personal devices, endpoints are becoming more vulnerable than ever, and mobile attacks are growing in popularity. In our survey, 100% of respondents stated that they found gaps in their security practices and policies as a result of moving to remote work, with nearly a quarter identifying considerable gaps that they need to mitigate. So It leads to this question: can your current remote support tool meet this moment? Are you able to deliver the support that is needed in a time when we are not in the four walls of your office with a help desk down the hallway on the same network on company sanctioned equipment? And so there's a lot to consider there. So this workplace revolution means that going forward, virtually every company needs to figure it out. How do they secure work from home anywhere workplace that's now spread across all these different networks, locations, and devices that continues to deliver support that allows them to connect quickly to end users, seek support from their peers through collaboration, and ensure that every connection is secure. So let's talk through this. Connecting quickly. I want to talk about 3 different ways in which IT organizations can think about connecting with employees to deliver support in this new era. So first, it's really about how do you give your remote workforce a lifeline? You know, a well-connected help desk can make employees feel really supported. They feel that connection even when you aren't physically there. And there's value in providing, you know, the ability to get into a remote session quickly and easily. Our own technology allows for both technician-initiated and user-initiated connection methods. So as an employee, I could leverage a calling card, which is a one-click applet or app on my desktop that gets me right to internal IT for help directly from my desktop. I wouldn't need to call or Slack someone IT. You simply click on the calling card, enter a description of the problem, and a tech will see the request come through on their technician console. Now, we also offer a channel link and a channel form that can be added to your company intranet webpage or support portal. And the difference is simply how much information do you want to ask an employee to provide as a background before bringing them into a technician. Now, on a technician side, on the help desk side, technicians have the options of generating a PIN code from their console to start a session. Then they can either direct the employee to a company-branded calling card on that employee's desktop, if that's already pre-installed, or to a website, which might be either our Log Me In PIN page, Log Me In 123, or your own self-hosted PIN page if you want to provide that extra layer of security and brand authenticity. And techs can also leverage unattended access to work on issues when employees are on downtime. So this is, you know, I know that this person's having an issue. I'm going to install a patch update or push an update to their machine or a software update. And this can help maximize efficiency and minimize inconvenience for someone. So they could be away at lunch or they could be overnight, and unattended access allows that technician to get in there, get it done, and get out without disruption. But something that's come across pretty much a lot since the people were forced to go work from home is that we are no longer able to get help for things that are not connected. So if I was in the office and the printer wasn't working, you know, I walk down the hallway and ask for help with a paper jam. Or, you know, I'm trying to connect something to something else. You know, the help desks are now being asked to support a mix of physical equipment and in-home workspaces to keep employees productive. And what they really need is a tool that allows them to virtually stand shoulder to shoulder with that employee and make it easier to resolve those home office issues so they can get back to work easier. Our Rescue Live Guide allows our technicians to instantly have visibility into any piece of equipment by using video support through the mobile devices, through your employee's mobile device. So they can basically generate a PIN code, send it in a text message, you open that link, and you've given the technician access to the camera on your mobile phone, and you can now show them, hey, see, I don't know, or the technician can say, hey, go to your modem, I can help you figure out how to connect this. Okay, I'm going to draw a square around this thing here. You want to, that's your Ethernet cable, and I want you, first step is to plug in there, and then it's really providing that step-by-step instruction to guide an employee in real time, which might seem very simple to many of us, but for someone who's never had to set up a home office or connect a printer or all the different cables, can be a really frustrating experience. So again, thinking about how can we provide empathy, part of it is, extending beyond the goalpost of what traditionally we were able to support in an IT help desk. And then third, the other thing I want to talk about here is ways in which organizations can start thinking more long-term and strategically about modernizing your employee support. Now, Rayanne spoke earlier about things that you can automate, automating repetitive tasks for self-service, whether it's providing standard FAQs or complex conversations. It's important to have tools that deliver the right answer so employees can get back to work and so that your support team can focus on higher value projects. So we have AI-driven self-service tool that allows you to do that and provides those insights back to your fingertips so you never have to, guess on how to continue that experience. You can also learn from that over time and find out that, employees really are asking for help on this, and we don't have an answer to it in our knowledge base. So now you can go out and create that, find that documentation and link it back. So really looking at how do you go from providing hand-to-hand combat with a technician to an employee and trying to upload that and reduce some of those repeatable tasks with an AI-driven self-service tool, a bot right there to answer those questions for your employees. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, that is a collaborate. I seem to go a little bit off screen there, is collaboration. Rayanne talked about this. It's a really important aspect in a world in which we're all working remotely. Being able to bridge gaps and bring people together in an effort to improve the support experience. As we know, every help desk employee is working remotely, and you're no longer able to just swivel over to the senior technician in your pod and say, hey, I'm having a real hard time seeing what's going on with this machine. Can you come take a look? So it's really important to ensure that your solution, your remote support solution, can support technician collaboration right there in the product. Consulting another technician or escalating an issue to another expert and observing specialists as they resolve those issues is also a real-time training opportunity for a more junior technician. Within our own organization, we saw, within our own product data, looking at Rescue since the time of January to currently, we saw a substantial increase in technicians inviting another technician into a remote support session to collaborate on a fix from March timeframe, and that spiked in March, and that has continued to stay at a much higher level throughout this entire pandemic. So again, technicians realize that it's kind of a team sport, and they need to rely on some of the expertise of others on their team who are not physically there, and this is being able to invite them into a session and be standing shoulder to shoulder with them in that experience and looking at that employee's problem is a great learning coaching experience, and also a great way to more seamlessly resolve the employee's issue without bopping them around to a million different places. And then finally, secure everything. If you weren't prepared, maybe, your employees didn't get home with their workstation and they're now relying on a personal laptop or a desktop to connect in. This raises tons of issues with security and privacy. Making sure, do they have antivirus software, firewall, and a VPN? All of those things can help with that. And what we're finding is, some of our best practices is, yes, always connect on VPN if that's available to you, even on company device. But for those that are on personal devices, we found that many of our customers are actually using Rescue to help create that separation of personal and work information. So they're using Rescue on someone's personal laptop to create an extra profile on their machine as their professional profile. This creates a very clear separation and allows to ensure that they have the right software and setup as well. And so it's completely restricted from other users in the home, and it's kind of like this standalone tunnel right into a secure connection there. And so that rescue's been really invaluable in those situations where employees are relying on those personal desktops in a way that makes it very secure. And so, I think the other thing we have to be wary of is staying connected and protecting from malicious actors. One of the things that has been shown in the news is that there's a lot more scammers out there trying to take advantage of people that are in a much more frustrated state in their lives. They're getting text messages on their phone that say, this is an important work document, open it, whatever it might be. And what they're finding is these are really just phishing scams and people trying to take control of your mobile device or install malware on your machine or something. So regardless of whether your employees are in an office, coffee shop, their living room, they really need robust endpoint security to mitigate the risk of a breach or a cyber attack. It's particularly important for IT teams to provide these security controls from anywhere over any network that allows them. We offer a ton of different security layers within our technology, from 256-bit encryption, permission-based models, so every agent, every technician that is allowed access to Rescue has specific permissions associated with them. Can they only remotely view someone's machine? Can they remote control? Can they, X, Y, and Z? Two-factor authentication, single sign-on, and then a litany of deeper restrictive packages that allow you to ensure that people that get access to remote support or leverage your remote support technology are within specific IP ranges as well. So we can dedicate specific, what's your IP, you can only use this type of PIN page to remote into someone. So we can really set up walls to ensure that these malicious actors can't gain access into a remote tool and try and take control of anything. It's always the scary stuff, but it's really important. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to do bad things, and we've done a phenomenal job of ensuring that organizations, machines, and access stays pretty secure. So I wanted to close here. Rescue is a larger part of LogMeIn, which is a leading SaaS company in the world, and we've really been focused on helping professionals to remotely support a variety of different work from anywhere aspects, whether it's collaborating through online meeting tools, whether it's securing your passwords, whether it's two-factor authentication, and whether it's remote access and support. We've got a complete portfolio of remote work tools. And we've also designed a really compelling remote work readiness quiz that will help you focus on the right areas to invest to support your remote workforce. So I encourage all of you, the link is in the attachment and links section of the BrightTalk portal here. I encourage you to go ahead, take that quiz, and get some insights on how your remote work readiness stands up with peers in the industry. And with that, I'm going to head it back over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie. Great presentations, both of them. And if you have questions about those presentations, click on the Q&A tab below the slide in your BrightTalk window and send us those questions. We want to hear them. I know both of our presenters would like to speak to those. We've got one here that touches on a subject that both Rayanne and Marie touched on about swarming. I remember Marie mentioned that 40% of organizations are flattening their support tiers, and Rayanne had talked about pulling in technicians from different areas. So Rayanne, can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like in practice?
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. So what it is a matter of how do I get this person involved real time while I'm working directly with the employee or the customer. So while I'm working with them, instead of taking a ticket and putting it into a queue, and then a lot of you said that was in the survey, you said that was part of the delay, getting the follow-up from another team or just getting a delay in response and resolution. So by doing it this way, by swarming, by bringing them in real time, we're eliminating that time factor, and we're eliminating that challenge, or we're starting to overcome that challenge of having a delay before somebody else gets involved. So from a practical perspective, a lot of times it is a collaboration tool, so it may be a chat channel. It could be bringing somebody in live on a phone call, but the big piece of that is that that person's available to bring in that expert, and it's getting the right person at the right time, and then capturing that information so that we're all learning from it and that we can reuse it the next time. And I've seen some organizations not know it's called swarming, but they're doing it for high priority tickets like 1s and 2s. And then I've seen other organizations doing it for all of theirs. I don't know.
And do you
Marie,
think
do you
it's also, Rayanne, is that crowdsourcing and swarming? Is there much of a difference there, or is it just naming?
So I guess the key difference is you might not be putting, I think you could accomplish it with both, right? But I do think that a lot of times with swarming, I know the specific skill set that I need to have, and I reach out to that specific person. But I think with crowdsourcing, you could get the same kind of reaction. It's just going to a larger or broader
from a larger
audience.
Community, right?
Right.
Okay.
Great question.
So Marie, what would swarming look like if you were to use a technology tool? How does that work? You mentioned that a lot of, you've seen an increase in technicians inviting other technicians. How does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, we call it technician collaboration. Swarming, when I think of swarming, I think of like many people swarming on something. Within our product, that is literally an invitation. So if you could be inviting, I believe, multiple technicians into a session, which wouldn't make a lot of sense, but you can invite a specific technician into a session that, hey, I know this technician is really skilled in Android devices, or, you know, Windows machines that are having, or Mac Catalina issues, okay? And so I'm going to bring him in because he's my resident expert and I'm having an issue here. So you can invite that technician in. You can set the permissions that person has. Can they file share? Can they take control of the machine or whatnot? And from there, they both are in the session with the end user and able to have a dialogue and find out the root cause and hopefully work a fix there. But like I said, it's a great opportunity to learn for that other technician. Now, we certainly also, within LogMeIn's walls, we leverage swarming from the aspect of, you know, we have a support channel on our Slack system for, you know, customer issues around specific topics, and we might come in and a product expert or a support engineer or whatnot might have a response there, and we always try to close that out to, you know, the people, our team's really great about saying, this is great information, I'm going to go create an article off of this as well to make sure that this is readily available in our knowledge base moving forward. So I think there's multiple approaches you can take, whether it's using third-party tools to bring someone in to get that knowledge and bring it back into the conversation, or in the case of Rescue, having it integrated into the product where you can invite someone into the session and have them be present and either drive it or consult on the issue at hand.
Thank you, Marie. So we have another question here, and it builds on the same concept. Rayanne, how can escalation teams, like, is there value in swarming or this real-time collaboration for them? I know traditionally maybe the idea was that we put tickets in a queue so they can get to it without just interrupting all the other work. Is it something that has efficiency improvements for the entire organization, or is it just faster for the customer?
Absolutely. I think that at first they reject it or they push back on it thinking it's going to require more time. And in the moment, yes, it's taking my time, but as long as we do what we both said before and Marie so nicely articulated, let's create that knowledge article, then what escalation teams are seeing is that they're actually getting freed up for more value add type of work, maybe project work. They're getting fewer unnecessary escalations. And they're seeing that the service desk, because the service desk can handle these the next time they come in, and they don't need to request the swarm. Does that answer that question for you?
Yes, I definitely think so. So Marie, one last question. I'll close out with you. You talked a lot about security. It seems like for every news story there's an accompanying scam. What do you recommend people be on the lookout for from a security perspective and protecting themselves and their customers?
Great question. I think you always want to be cognizant of information you're sharing. No personal information. You want to make sure that you're always on a VPN if that's what your company offers. If someone sends you a link, do not click on it unless you, these are all the practical exercises that you're told about in your day-to-day as an individual every day, but professionally as well. It's good password, not giving someone your password. These are all just common practices. And I think as an organization, looking at different levers that you can pull, whether it's, restricting who can access your PIN code page, or, I think it's just really sticking to the hard facts of we've got security processes and protocols. Don't skirt outside of them, and especially in this time and age when, like I said, malicious activity is on the rise, but, you're on your home network. That's not managed by your IT department. So I don't know, is your home Wi-Fi locked? I would hope so, but it might not be. So I think those are some of the practical steps every individual has to take, both as a consumer and a professional, to safeguard their data as well as data they may have on hand that is not theirs, that maybe belongs to the company.
Thank you, Marie. That is all the time we have today. Thank you to everyone in the audience who joined us and participated in today's discussion. I'd also like to thank our speakers, Rayanne Bruno of Business Solutions Training Incorporated, for joining us, and thank you to Marie Russo of Rescue by LogMeIn for sponsoring today's webinar. This webcast is copyright 2020 by Informa Tech. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by HDI, which is solely responsible for its content. Our individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. Have a great day. I hope you'll join us again on October 20th for another great discussion.